skies, firefight calls. The stakes are high, turn the slay heroes and spies. Control fire, where strategy lies. Hear the tales, fierce and deep. Victors roar, defeated weep. We blaze a way, we don't hold back. Control fire, ready to attack.
Welcome to another episode of Controlled Fire, your monthly musings on Mantic's Firefight. I'm Luke.
I'm Sam.
And I'm Mike.
And in this episode 20, we're going to unpack the narrative missions that appear in the Command Protocols book, but not in the Companion, which is mildly annoying, I think. But they are in the book, and these are missions that are designed for narrative and casual play. But before we get into that, let's jump into some From the Forge. Has anyone worked on anything lately?
I mean, I'm still kind of continuing with my Epic Warpath terrain and doing a little bit of multi-basing, getting ready for Kings of War 4th, but things have been a little slow there.
Well, you need new bases, so your old army is not just legal in the next edition of Kings of War.
Oh, it's fine. This is just armies which I've had on regular bases, and I'm just like, you know what? It's going into a new edition. How about I actually do proper multi-base? Because these are armies I would have been playing in Kings of War First Ed, right?
Yeah.
And back in Kings of War First Ed, it was just assumed you were on bases.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, I have to do a lot of stuff for my armies because my armies aren't legal for the new edition.
Because they were too filth and the filth has been removed?
Even the ones that aren't filthy, they're just not legal. Because I don't tend to do, like, infantry and stuff, right? I don't like assembling and painting all those little dudes. I've always tended towards the large infantry and you know, those sorts of models. So my Northern Alliance, which by all accounts is just quite a balanced, normal, everyday, non-filthy army.
I've never heard these accounts.
Not from Luke's list.
I mean, you know, it's strongly put together. It's, you know, optimized for what it is, but it's not like a, you know, all flying Alpha Strike or anything like that. It's a very mixed combined arms list. Has one regiment of infantry. So it has like barely anything that you can actually unlock. So I've got to make new stuff even for that army. What I've been working on for now is just printing a bit of Trench Crusade stuff. So myself and some buddies are getting into that. So I'm printing off a bunch of warbands for that and getting ready to go. And my partner and I also forged a baby in the last
Hooray!
in the last couple of weeks. 3 days before Selec, and I think a week or two after Max. So it's been a very Kings of War baby frenzy. How about yourself, Mike?
I'm trying to remember what I said I'd done in the last episode, but I have completed the star set for Halo, got that together. Fortunately, I didn't manage to make it to the event that I was supposed to be taking that to demonstrate it. We had a bit of a storm and my car got written off with hail damage.
No!
So I wasn't able to get to that. I had to spend time looking for a new vehicle, which is currently on its way for that. But I got that painted and put up there and done everything else for that, so that's I can demo Halo in the future. And generally, I've just been looking at events and kind of planning what I want to do roughly for 2026 in the Brisbane area and what I want to do. So I got the Clash event or Mantic Mania, which is the base of the Clash of Kings and Clash of Alignments. So Clash of Alignments, I guess it's known. It was Clash of Protocol last year in Canberra, which is the big Kings of War event, tacked on to the end of that. So there was, I think, 18 people who played Firefight. A majority of those people played it for the first time at the end of that event, so that's coming up soon. And then looking at what I might be... And then we've got FullCon again in April and looking at filling in other events in the meantime. So starting to plan those out for the next year.
Awesome.
All right, so into the episode, narrative missions. Like I said, these are in the book and there are 8 of them, just as there are 8 of the normal missions as well. So why would we play the narrative missions, guys?
Well, I've just started playing these a bit recently because of the Dying Light campaign. And so this is a chance to try out some new things. And a lot of that has been the narrative missions. I'm really enjoying them because they have a very different feel to the balance of the core 10 now, with the extra 2 missions that came with alignment protocols. Because there's just a lot more randomness in it. It's not you do this action and then you automatically get points. You do this action and then you roll to see if you get points. And so because there's this extra skill mitigator, if you're having two players who may have a bit more of a skill difference going on, there's a bit more randomness in there in order to disrupt some of that.
Yeah, and I feel like when there's that kind of randomness, that means that it's hard to, be a competitive game, right? Like,
yes.
It's very hard to do most of these missions. Some of them, maybe, but on the whole, it's hard to do them competitively. So when you enter a game with the mindset that this is not competitive, so you're playing something like maybe Dead Zone, Gaslands, those kinds of games that we typically refer to as a beer and pretzels game, I think the mindset difference when you go into it causes you to make different decisions during the game revolving around fun rather than winning. An example I always use for this kind of effect is with Gaslands. I always say, if you've got the choice of doing a cool maneuver and zipping around into first place, or ramming another car into a barricade, which do you choose? And it's ram the car into the barricade every single time, because that game you are playing with the express purpose of having lots of fun and laughs, right? I think narrative missions kind of make you more in that mindset of, maybe I'll YOLO something out here to do something that it shouldn't be able to do in a normal game, normally wouldn't succeed in, but let's give it a go because this is a fun narrative mission.
I'm also looking forward to Dead Zone fanatics coming after you for having described Dead Zone as a beer and pretzels game.
Well, I mean, it is. So
I would describe it.
Come at me. I love the game. It's great.
I love Dead Zone 2, and I would describe it as a beer and pretzels game. It's a game that you can play in about 45 minutes. And
we play it very differently.
I could go through. Yes, Sam. Sam, are you actually admitting that you may be just a little bit more intense than some other people?
Well, it wasn't a tournament. We had the game day that you ran with Dead Zone at the club, and I, quote unquote, came first. I had no right to. I just rolled lots of 8s, right? So the person that came out on top just rolled tons of 8s all day, and that's how they won. That's not a competitive game.
We mainly either run or play tournaments between the three of us, but I think there is a market out there that do just go to the normal games club and they just play in people's garages and they want to play a game. To me, all of these missions are just, as you said it before, they're just fun.
Yes.
Like they're fun to play. Like you just want to do something and have something to do and have to be fun, and you're not too worried about balance and it's not going to upset you about that, then play these games and play these missions and just have a whole bunch of belly laughs as you're playing your game.
Awesome. Well, shall we jump into them and start unpacking them?
Sure. So the first one is seismic shift. So the whole idea of this planet is basically has become unstable, and the different random events is going to happen every single turn, every single round, I should really say. And you roll on the dice. On a one, it's basically a 25% chance on each result. It's unstable. All units immediately make a nerve test. If the unit fails its nerve test, it gains a pin marker. Cracked Earth units may not perform sprint actions this round. Rumbling Grind, all shoot actions will have an additional -1 modifier this round, and eruptions. Each unit immediately loses 1 hit point, and if the unit is in a building, it loses 2 hit points from the falling masonry. Basically just a kill mission with random effects that happen every single turn. I guess I'll continue. I did actually play this mission once with the local Neil, and unfortunately in his scenario, whenever he wanted to do that particular turn, we happened to roll up that particular event that would stop that thing from happening, going through. So poor Neil got screwed over by the dice every single time, but again, we still had fun in what we were going to be able to do. It's great to just envision the fact that you're working on a planet that's basically just about to all fall apart, Alderaan or whatever going through. Sam, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I like this one because it's relatively simple. I mean, the victory points, it's just done on kill, and if there's a difference between the scores of at least 10%, then the person who destroyed more is the winner. So it really just comes down to whatever you're able to remove of the opponent's army while retaining yours. I think it's interesting that the different results on the table will favour different factions. So robbing a plague army of the ability to sprint for a turn, which means they're having to advance into assault, even if they've got the range, can just be hugely debilitating for them. But similarly, GCPS are going to hate having a -1 to hit. Forge Fathers, I think, particularly would hate getting all units lose a hit point, considering how jealously they guard those hit points behind heavy armor and high armor values. Whereas Veermen don't care about that. They've got so many bodies, but they would care about having to roll nerve checks across their entire army or be pinned. So it's,
No, Veermen always roll 8 for nerves every time. It's the best.
So I think it's really interesting. Obviously it's very random, but it's obviously very fun as well. I think it might actually be a good mission for someone's second game or maybe third game, just because they've probably got enough of the rules under their belt. We can start adding in some fun kind of shenanigans there. And as we said, the extra randomness is going to do some of that skill mitigation as well.
Yeah, so this is pretty fun. The difference between a shooting army getting -1 and an assault army not being able to sprint is night and day, right? Like, they are not the same thing. It might perhaps be better to say, like, you can't sprint unless it's a charge, and then give charging a negative to attack or something like that. Because if you keep rolling that in your plague, like, it's just the worst. It's not fun.
It's the same with all these narrative missions. Like, if you continually fail some of these 5-up rolls, which we'll be seeing later to score, it can be tremendously frustrating.
Yeah,
I know.
But if you made a change like that, I think you could take this table and you could apply it to any other mission, regular or other narrative missions, as part of like a campaign to really shake things up. Like, this doesn't have to be a kill scenario. You can take those weather effects, basically, and apply them. Or maybe use it as inspiration for your campaign to come up with your own weather effects that can change things through a game and apply those to narrative missions. That could be cool.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to say, we're talking about weather effects and also reminded of a game from the past, but it's the same sort of principle. As I said, this is one thing you said at Mark's Dying Light campaign that he's running here in Brisbane, and it's very interesting to be able to keep going through and play them in that narrative campaign.
Mm-hmm. Well, the next mission is Lab Raid. So in Lab Raid, the entire area is a Maison Labs black site for research into secret and dangerous tech. The rewards and the risks from searching this area can be vast. So for this scenario, there are going to be 6 Maison Labs research buildings, alternately placed by players in the opposing player's half of the board, and then complete the rest of the terrain as you would for your normal setup. The special rules for this scenario is that research buildings, all of them may not be entered in this game. They're basically going to count as blocking terrain, and we'll see that in some of the later scenarios as we unpack them as well, where the buildings just become blocking terrain instead of the normal rules you'd have for buildings. Instead, you can move a unit in base-to-base contact with the building and then roll a d8. On a 1 or a 2, research specimens erupt and start attacking your unit. So you get charged by 2 Plague Stage 2A Leapers. And then if you survive, you get a point. If you roll a 3 or 4, you find some med packs. You get to recover D4 health points at the cost of a pin marker, unless you actually have the construct keyword, because robots can't be healed by med packs. Fair enough. If you roll a 5 or a 6, you gain a point. And if you roll a 7 or 8, you gain 2 points. At the end of the game, at the end of the normal 5 rounds, the player with the most VPs is the winner. What do we think of Lab Raid?
I think Jason's going to hate it because he's going to roll lots of 1s. Just constantly be getting attacked by leapers.
I love the flavour of this. I think it's really great. And it's kind of like, am I going to get 2 VPs or am I going to get attacked by leapers? I just think, and it's the whole, Maison Labs facility and stuff like that. I think it's oozing flavour, and I have not played this one yet, but I think I would enjoy playing this game.
I think I'd actually be more annoyed at rolling a 3 or a 4 and getting med packs, just because the unit may not already have been damaged, and even so, D4 hit points for the cost of a pin marker. At least if you get charged by the leapers, if you live, you get a point. I'm actually annoyed if I roll a 3 or a 4 and heal stuff back. I think that's actually the worst thing to roll.
Yeah, the mission's fine. I think maybe like if you search as a long action, you get a chance to reroll might be a good addition. Just like if your Cypher's finding a med pack, you're like, oh, I'd rather fight a leaper than, find a med pack, exactly. The setup's the awkward part for me, because it does say you put down hills and obstacles and then you do the buildings.
Yep.
And then place the rest of the terrain at the end. And I think first of all, you'd have to shunt around hills and obstacles potentially as you're placing buildings, and you could end up with weird domino stacking effects as you shunt a bunch of terrain across the board. But then to place other terrain at the end as well just seems a bit clunky, because once you know sides, placing the rest of the terrain could, create some sort of bias, whether it's unconscious or otherwise, in where you put different terrain. Now you know what side you are, what your armies are, and where everything is.
Yeah, it is weird to go, right? We've now put out our objectives. I'm now going to put all this terrain in a way that favours my...
Yeah. I think you could just set this up with the 3 buildings on each half and like as fairly as possible and set up the rest of the table. Or you could even do the alternate placement where it's just you each place a building one at a time until there's 3 in each half. Like, so you put the third one in one half, then I can only put my next one in the other half. And then you do the rest of the terrain together and then you roll for sides. That seems like the best way to do this one to me. So the next mission is Take Back the City. So this is again taking turns to place a total of 4 buildings this time, each with capacity 10. And then, more buildings for larger games, as it says in the mission. Again, they have to be outside deployment zones in the opposer's half of the board. After placing these buildings, each player will then note down 1 building they've deployed as holding strategic assets of great value. And you keep this secret from your opponent until the end. So to score this mission, at the end of each round, any building that you have occupied with your models but no other enemy models, which is impossible anyway, so I don't know why the distinction. At the end of round, gets 1 victory point, and if it's the great value strategic asset, you get 3 victory points at the end of the game once it's revealed. Right, so it's 1 for each at the end of each round, and then at the end of the game, if you have the great value, it's another 3.
Oh, that's neat. So it's kind of like a kicker, effectively. Yeah, great. I mean, it feels a little bit like Take and Hold, except this one is scored progressively. So Take and Hold, of course, has 1 building in the middle, whereas this is going to have 4 buildings for smaller games, 6 buildings for your medium-sized game, and up to 8 by the time you get to some of the larger games of 2,000 points.
Of all the missions that we're probably covering in this episode, I think this is one that could actually be converted into a tournament scenario, but eliminate the buildings and just have it as various terrain pieces, like anything that's area terrain. I think I actually wouldn't mind trying it at some point in time. I may give that actually a bit of a go. I think it's actually probably got an opportunity to do that. Bit of smoke and mirrors, something a little bit different.
The hidden one is like I said, like Smoke and Mirrors, from Kings of War. It's a hidden information, but it's not like a random aspect that, might, screw you if you roll the wrong die. You trying to guess what they've put is actually strategic.
It's bluff counters, right?
Yeah. So I think that's fine. I think there's another one that's better for tournaments, although this, I do agree, very well could be. For larger games, stretching to 8 buildings might be problematic, but like if you're doing narrative missions and that sort of thing, you're probably either playing with a friend or at a club or in a campaign. And I think if everyone rocks up with a table worth of terrain, between the two of you, you should be able to cobble together enough buildings for the larger games anyway. So, I think for a tournament, getting that many buildings might be the problem.
Yeah, because when you have potentially such variability between the tables that people are supplying for tournaments, guaranteeing that each table would have, say, six buildings for a 1,500 point game might be a bit variable. But like as you say, if people are happy to use area terrain and make that scoring, noting that it would need to be what they've said here with strategic assets only having your models inside it, which they wouldn't, as you said, they don't need to specify for buildings.
To be fair, though, given that we don't use true line of sight in this game, it is the footprint, you could just use squares of cardboard. Like if you wanted to have an event that had this, you could, not every mission is going to need tons of buildings. So it would be more a case of like for the missions that need the extra buildings that you don't have, you pull out the cardboard templates and you put them down.
The listeners can't see, but I'm frowning, frowning deeply at Luke.
Man, you could print cool looking sci-fi buildings on them. Like neoprene terrain.
I mean, I will say, at around this point, I guess we're actually talking about objective markers, right? And your normal 40 mil thing in there, and then the footprint around it. We're kind of just talking about scoring and holding objectives. But the thing that makes this one interesting is that it is all urban buildings, and so you do have to go in, drive the people out of it. So.
Yeah, so I'm actually looking forward to playing this on my city board that I've been talking about for a very long time, and it's still in boxes. But it's designed for that kind of table. So I'd be looking forward to playing that on it. Maybe I need to get someone to come over and assemble my city for me, and then I can paint it. It's just that hurdle of gluing all the bits together that just is hard.
So they'll take it away, assemble it, and then you'll take back the city?
Zing!
So the next mission is Evacuate. The premise of the mission is a rapid advance to strike force can often catch local inhabitants unprepared and leaving them trapped in the war zone. While corporations care little for their workers and their families, occasionally there may be someone worth saving amongst the herd. These high-value citizens are usually scientists, politicians, or overdrive stars.
There might be someone worth saving, and there might be some not worth saving.
There's a line later on that I absolutely love. But anyway, so it's a similar thing, 4 buildings. Each building's got a HVA, so your normal HVA model is very similar to, Extraction. Is the normal rules, but you're going into the building, you get the HVA, and you get 1 victory point for each HVA that you manage to hold by the end of the game, following all the usual HVA type of rules. I love the fact that place 1 high-value citizen model inside each building, and then less valuable citizens are considered to be fleeing the barrier. I love the less valuable citizens section of it, and maybe chuckle every time I actually read it.
Life has value in the GCPS. It is very carefully ascribed a value.
Yeah. Okay, so again, this is something else. This is a variation of basically Extraction.
Yeah, I think so too. So, Extraction, of course, you have 3 HVAs on the center line, whereas in this case you have 4 HVAs. But just like with the lab raid mission, instead we've got impassable buildings, and you need to move in contact and spend a short action to attach the HVAs to you that way. So, I think it's interesting. I haven't played this one yet, but the way it sort of plays out in my head is each player moves up to extract their HVA, the 2 HVAs from the buildings in their half of the battlefield. But I wonder if there is a sneaky play of doing a rapid insertion in order to capture an HVA in the opponent's half and then try and get them all back into your side, in the same way you're trying for those sort of rapid extractions in Extraction as well.
Yeah, likewise. It reads like Extraction, but slightly different to me as well. But yeah, I think based on that sort of normal strategy that's likely to happen, like you said, with, protecting your 2 and then trying to steal 1, I think Forge Fathers are going to hate this scenario because all you got to do is grab your 2 and run away. And then the best that the Forge Fathers can hope for really is a draw. So I think they're going to hate that. This, I think, would be playable, though, in a tournament. This is probably my pick for playability in tournaments, as long as you're not playing Forge Fathers. But, this is Vietnam's scenario, isn't it? Pop up behind them and
Night Stalkers.
go ham.
I'll lick my lips as Night Stalkers playing this scenario.
And then anything with mules.
Which is like half the armies anyway, right?
Yeah.
So, one of the things I particularly like about the scenario with the calling out the overdrive stars, I'm not sure if you remember back in Dead Zone, I think 1st edition, they introduced a special scenario which was a Dreadball star who'd gotten lost in a dead zone. And the 2 strike teams are in there trying to counsel this Dreadball star to come with them so they can extract them. And so now we've got the firefight version of this, except with overdrive stars.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I did like that. That's why I did mention the comment on there, bringing in another game. I think it's really cool.
Mm-hmm. So our next scenario is Hearts and Minds. We mentioned this one briefly in our last episode because we've been playing this one in the Dying Light campaign. So even in the worst of battlefields, you need to get the populace onto your side, normally by convincing or cajoling them into supplying your troops and not hindering your mission. Sometimes even by infecting them with rare and unknown viruses, each to their own. So this mission uses 6 buildings. I think we're probably also seeing a running theme with a lot of these narrative missions. They have very clear building requirements for them. So again, this is one where buildings are impassable for units. They count as blocking terrain. Instead, when a unit that does not have the walker, vehicle, or beast keyword moves into contact with a building, you can spend a short action in order to win the locals' hearts and minds over to you. You roll a d8, and on a 5+, you get to place a token on that building to show that the inhabitants support you. Hooray! If you are a command unit, then you get to re-roll the failed test. Obviously, your leaders are much better at inspiring the local populace in order to join your cause. If there's already a token from the opponent, then you replace it with your own. It doesn't go, say, from against you to neutral to supporting you. It's just a binary there. If you don't roll that 5+, you don't do anything. You just stand there knocking on the door and the civilians are ignoring you. And so for every building with one of your tokens on it in the end phase of each round, you score a VP, and whoever has the most VPs at the end is the winner. What do we think of Hearts and Minds?
I played this as part of the campaign. I was using my Night Stalkers. I could hear everybody else complaining on their tables about not being able to roll a 5+. I was playing against Mark, and Mark and I roll 5+ every single time. So we had the most fickle population on the planet. It didn't matter who's knocking on the door; they automatically changed sides. So the tokens were flipping left, right, and centre. But I actually got to use it. In that particular game, I was using a lot of the tactics that we discussed in Size Matters, because playing Night Stalkers at larger units, I was able to get to be able to touch and knock on buildings a lot easier than what Mark could using his Forge Fathers having smaller units. So for me, it was a good advantage. But it was quite amusing to think of Night Stalkers converting the population. But it's just that's the way it goes. But I had a ball. I really enjoyed playing that, and it was good.
Yeah, I think this is my favourite scenario, not just for the name, which I like. It always makes me think of Thoughts and Prayers as well. There's a heavy amount of irony with that statement. It's just so different to all the regulative and narrative scenarios, I think, in how it works. It reminds me a lot of like real-time strategy video games where you have to capture and control different points, because you don't have to sit there holding it. You just have to capture it, and then you can move on, but someone else might swing in and capture it off you later. So it feels like an RTS to me, and I like that.
There is a similar scenario in Star Wars Legion, which I think is a moisture evaporator one, where you're either fixing them or breaking them. And so you're actually moving up your units and either kicking them or moving up to repair them. And it's basically flipping from a scoring points for me or scoring points for them sort of thing.
Do you have to speak bocce?
So yeah, I also played the scenario with the campaign. Could I roll a 5? So there were just so many times where my units were just to no avail, banging on doors, and it's very frustrating. But I guess it's one of those things that forces you to see the game less seriously, because there is honestly nothing you can do if you're not going to roll that 5, and so you just have to let it go, and it's great. I've also played missions in other games where you do have to roll. I'm thinking something like Drop Zone Commander, where you're trying to extract things from inside buildings and you roll to see whether you're able to claim that asset. The roll gets easier if you continue to fail it. And so it might be like a 6 up first time, and then it becomes a 5 up and then a 4. And so the longer you are banging on those doors, the more of a time the people inclined will take pity on you, I guess. That's it. I do appreciate the simplicity of Firefight and the callous nature of GCPS citizens. They are not for turning.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting point. I don't know about, the repetition of attempting and how you would track that in Firefight. But certainly you could think about something like if it's neutral, it's easier than if it's controlled by the opposing player. So it could be 5+ if the opposing player controls it as normal, but maybe just even a 4+ or a 3+ if it's currently neutral. That might help you at least get traction somewhere in the game. Even if you can't then steal them off someone else, you at least get somewhere.
I mean, I think there is a lot to be said for the simplicity of it as well, and it's just tremendously frustrating when you can't roll it.
So the next mission is Fighting Withdrawal. In this one, there's an attacker and a defender. So the attacker has a normal deployment zone, but the defender has to deploy within 6 inches either side of the center line. The defender can try and run away. That's the entire point of the mission, while the attacker chases them down. So at the end of the game, for every unit that the defender has managed to move off the long table edge that's the opposite edge of where the attacker starts, they gain 1 victory point, or 2 if it's a command unit. So this is where command units score better than other units, which is kind of cool. For every unit destroyed by the attacker, they gain 2 victory points, or 3 if it's a command unit. And the player with the most VPs at the end wins. So to exit, you just have to get the leader model to reach the board edge with an advance or a sprint. So not running away, not a consolidation after being assaulted. They have to advance or sprint off.
Yes.
And then you also score their victory points when you escape. So I think every campaign needs one or more asymmetric scenarios. And this is, I think, the only one in the book, which is,
Surprising.
which is pretty unique, I think. Every narrative campaign also needs a scenario where one force is fleeing, because there's always something written into the narrative where someone's on their back foot and they're maybe pulling out of a city or trying to, get back to their base or something like that, and they're being chased down. So that's kind of cool. The issue with this scenario is transports. Like, you can just move the transport and then jump the unit in and out on turn 1 and get out instantly, and then move the vehicle off if it's still alive on turn 2. So if you've got lots of vehicles, if you're playing a very armored transport sort of game, turn 2 you're off the board. The glaring issue with the scenario is actually that there's no incentive for the defender to do anything other than sprint away as fast as possible. Like, there's not really a fighting part to fighting withdrawal. It's just withdrawal.
It is a wholesale route.
I think I don't know what the answer is. I think you would have to modify for this to actually really be playable, because as it stands, it's just defender is off the board on turn 2 or 3, and that's the end of the game.
If you build a list just to do this scenario as defender, then it's very hard to lose it, right? So, I mean, I would assume that this is then randomly rolled up, and so you'd be using a more conventional list.
Yeah, but you can start everything 18 inches away from the exit. Like, everything can be on that line 18 inches away.
Oh, I see what you're saying. And so you then have 2 sprints and you're off.
2 sprints and you're off. Or a sprint and a regular move for most things, So if you can sprint everything in turn 1, if things happen to get pinned, then you just remove the pin marker at the end of the game, you activate that unit first and you sprint off. Like, I think you're out turn 2, turn 3 on the outside, except for whatever dies. It's just way too easy to get out.
I mean, I think it's...
Unless you Forge Fathers.
That's my comments. My comments are, if I was playing Night Stalkers, I would love this to be on the defense. Either side, actually, it doesn't matter. If I was playing Forge Fathers, I would hate this scenario 100%.
I mean, I think it is also, it is the space between the factions is so small. If it is an assault-focused attacker, then, of course, whatever they haven't run away with, you charge. That will activate the unit. And so you will start locking down some of those sort of units in the middle.
Yeah, sure. But, like, you don't have many things that can charge me turn 1, right?
You're starting like potentially 6 inches apart.
Why am I putting anything 6 inches away from you? I'm putting things as far away from you as I can, right? So you'd have to be able to charge over 12 inches to do that, right? And I think most armies have at most a handful of units that can do that, right? Yes, definitely there are some that can charge you turn 1, but not that many, like not their whole army usually, right? So if they do...
There's plenty of armies that can charge over 24 freaking inches.
Yeah, but not every unit, right? Like a handful of units can do that. So you just cop it on those units. They withdraw 3 inches away, right? 6 inches away. So they get 6 inches just from being assaulted. And then next turn, you activate them first and you run off. You know what I mean? Like, it's too easy to get out.
Yeah, I do get your point that there is a lot more withdrawal than there is fighting in this. You are just looking to run away, and considering the spacings there, that's not terribly difficult to do.
Yeah, it could be something like the defender's not... You could even do defender can't sprint until turn 3, or, there's ways you could slow it down, but there's no incentive for the defender to actually fight. So it's just a withdrawal.
I agree with that. If you're looking at it from a purely tactical point of view, it's all about running away. Run away! Rape
away! I will say I haven't played it, so I don't actually know that it's the case. But I know we're certainly running it through in our heads that is exactly how we do it.
Yeah, I think this scenario works if you haven't thought about it in advance and it's the first time you've played it, because you probably put a bunch of things down and then go. And then realize halfway through the game, why didn't I just put everything on the line and run them away as fast as possible? So then the second time you play it, that's what you do.
All right, weapons testing. So the entire area is a corporation's weapon research facility. There may be valuable, new and untested military tech here. So again, you're basically taking turns to put down 4 buildings, very similar to most of the others. All buildings are placed outside the deployment zones and no closer than 3 inches to each building on the other side of the halfway zone. So this one has the special rules of basically as you roll up in there, it's very similar to the lab raid mission. But the first one is you tick, tick, Boom! You managed to find some unstable bombs, and searching unit takes D8 hits with blast D2 at AP1, and the searching unit gains 1 BP if it is not destroyed. Next on 3 to 4, ammo. The unit gains weight of fire 1 for the rest of the game. 5 to 6 is sweet tech. One model within the unit may use the new weaponry with the following profile: 24 inches, 4 dice, and gain 1 VP. And Fizz Banger on a 7 or 8. One model within the unit may use new weaponry with the following profile: 36 inches, 2 dice, blast D4, AP2, anti-aircraft, anti-tank, and gain 2 victory points.
Wow.
That one, though, like, if you don't have a shoot, does everything have a shoot stat, even if it doesn't normally have a ranged weapon?
No, some things are shoot dash.
Yeah, so I guess you just can't shoot if it's one of those units.
Mm-hmm.
Often those units will have beast, and so they wouldn't be able to search anyway, but there'd be some who don't.
I think to me it's very similar to the just a variation with slightly different things on the lab raid mission.
It is worth calling out the differences that in the lab raid mission, buildings may be searched more than once, but only once per round. Whereas for weapons testing, each building may be searched a maximum of 3 times during a game, but there's no round limit on searching the buildings.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I agree. It's like they wanted to get to 8 missions, so they just made a slight variation of another scenario and then balanced it with the 3 times because you don't want too many of those big weapons and weight of fire getting around and whatnot. I think if you replaced the med kits in Lab Raid with the ammo option from weapons testing, that would make a quote-unquote better scenario than either of them. But this scenario seems like the most fun of the two. I think finding those weapons and then running around and like blowing more stuff up just seems fun.
Yeah, I mean, again, just like rolling up med kits in Lab Raid, rolling up ammo, you go, hooray, I've got weight of fire 1, but I could have got points, even if I tick-boomed myself. I mean, I'd much rather explode a unit and get points than let it have weight of fire. That probably speaks to me, though.
Imagine your scarecrows getting weight of fire.
And our final mission is data retrieval. So in this mission, the local defense network has gone down, but valuable data is still held in terminals across the battlefield. Finding and accessing this data will be vital to winning the planet to your cause. This is the only one of the narrative missions that uses objective markers. So this one actually has just normal buildings. What a novelty in the narrative missions. Instead, you've got 6 terminals. These are the objective markers. These are placed outside of deployment zones in the opposing player's half of the board, no closer than 6 inches to another terminal, so very similar to normal objectives. What makes this one special? Well, for this one, whenever a unit, except a unit with the Walker, Vehicle, or Beast keyword, so worth noting, normally walkers can claim objectives, assuming they don't have Vehicle or Beast. Here it specifically calls out walkers, vehicles, or beast keywords. So that means that marionette phantoms are excluded from being able to tap this data.
And grunt bots.
Yep, grunt bots. There are only a few walker non-beast vehicles, but there are a couple. So to access a terminal, a unit must perform a short action and roll 1d8. There's a thing here where it says each roll of 5+ on either die, but you're only rolling 1 dice. We're imagining that's a typo. So if you roll a 5+, it counts as a success. You gain 1 VP for each successful access of data. Once you've accessed the terminal, you then get to remove it and place a new one 8 inches away in a scattered direction. If it goes off the table, you roll the direction again. When we played this mission, we did it that if it would be placed in blocking terrain, we shortened the 8 inches by the minimum distance to not put it in blocking terrain, that kind of thing. So the winner is the player with the most VPs at the end of the game. So again, it's a 5+ roll to get points, but this one's objectives, which are rescattering themselves across the board. What do we think of data retrieval?
Just an interesting point is the 2 dice is just a holdover from the original rules when Hacker was actually in.
That was, yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I think it was just a artifact of having hackers removed.
Yes, of course.
So that's just a holdover from that. They haven't removed that. They've removed the hacker part, but they haven't removed the extra commenting about the extra dice, unfortunately. But still, that's where that came from. Look, I haven't played it. It sounds fun, and I know Lucas has a similar opinion, but I love the way that they actually decided on how to work out the direction of how that randomly goes, which is the pointy bit on your D8 was sticking up there.
Yeah. So that's what really speaks to me about this scenario. So not the scenario itself, which is, fine. It seems fun. I think it's cool with the bouncing around of the objectives. I sort of envisaged a different kind of bouncing where there's multiple potential points that it could bounce to other, sort of adjacent ones, but they're fixed points on the ground. But the random direction adds a bit of, unpredictability. You can't just sit something where it might be later and hope it comes over there. So yeah, I like the elegance with which it manages to explain, the scatter direction with a D8 with half a sentence and that little tiny picture of the D8 with the chevron above it. Mm-hmm. So yeah, you roll a D8 and whichever the north point based on the orientation of the number you rolled is the kind of the direction that you roll. Mm-hmm. So you don't need any special kind of scatter dice. You can just roll a D8 and go, it's that way. I think I explained it very poorly just then. But the book does a good job because it's like half a sentence to do it, and it's very clear. There's a little diagram next to it, tells the story, and it's great.
I think it's very clever.
Yeah, I do like your idea about instead of scattering the objectives, having multiple fixed objectives, and when you tap data from one point, it turns off, and another one around the board turns on. I think that sounds very fun. It actually reminds me a little of Epic Warpath, where you do have different objectives turning on and off in each turn. And so it may be scoring this turn, but it then won't be in next turn and so on. Again, I played this one. I really did have to follow my philosophy of let it go as much as I could, but good Lord, it was really testing my patience. I'm very sorry, Peter. Because we had gotten to about midway through turn 2. I was 0 for 4 on my attempts to tap the data, and I think Peter was up to 3 out of 3. I'm just staring down at the battlefield, just willing any of my units to be able to tap this data. It eventually leveled out. It was also a great game against a great opponent. It was a lot of fun, but like I said, it really did force me to embrace the philosophy of these narrative missions, that they are there for fun. And those are the 8 narrative missions from Command Protocols. But as of Halloween, the RC were able to release a brand new narrative mission called Chlorophyll and Fear. So while we're here, let's run through Chlorophyll and Fear. So in this mission, a research laboratory experimenting on bridging the plague vector gap from fauna to flora has suffered a critical containment breach. Now an Avaran tree beast mutated to gargantuan size as a stage 2 plague form is rampaging through the sector, infecting all that it touches. Strike forces have been deployed to contain the outbreak and collect samples to determine ways to end the threat or to weaponize the nefarious experiment for their own purposes. So it's worth noting that this introduces rules for multiplayer games. So it calls out a few different concepts that changes the way regular firefight games work. So there's deployment order, which is players, so we assume 4 players, make recon rolls. Whoever scores the highest picks their deployment zone, then the next person picks their deployment zone, next person picks their deployment zone, and so on. Then in deployment order, they deploy their entire strike force and may not withhold any models. So normally you're able to withhold a number of models equal to the difference in recon rolls. That wouldn't make sense when you've got 4 different sets of recon rolls to make. So instead, each player may choose to hold up to 25% rounding down of their units in reserve, which I think is probably a sensible thing to do if you're going first, because if you're putting your army down and there are still 3 people to be placing, you might want to have some things which can't be shot able to come in as a reserve force. The next concept is initiative order, which is basically saying that things progress clockwise around the table. That extra activations, normally they cost 1 command point to extra activate a unit in a multiplayer game. It's 2. With that all out of the way, let's keep going with Chlorophyll and Fear. So in this one, there are 4 deployment zones if you're playing with a 4-player game, each only up to 6 inches onto the board. And in the middle of the board is an Avaran Tree Beast. The Avaran Tree Beast has attack profiles and all these sorts of things, just like a regular model. However, it can't be killed. It has infinite hit points. Instead, anytime a unit inflicts 2 hit points of damage on the Avaran Tree Beast, it pops out an HVA, which then people can go up and claim. If the damage against the Avaran Tree Beast was inflicted in assault, and the unit wins the assault, they can then claim the HVA for free. That's pretty hard to do because the Avaran Tree Beast hits back like a truck. At the beginning of each round, the Avaran Tree Beast moves in a scattering direction and sprays people with a sap spew. Also worth noting that every time the Avaran Tree Beast kills a model, it starts adding new Plague Zombie models onto the board as well, which also then run around and attack everything. It is an absolute living nightmare of new non-player units being spawned, running around and attacking everyone while they're all trying to run in and claim HVAs. What's our thoughts on Chlorophyll and Fear?
I really like it because I think there's not enough multiplayer-focused missions in tabletop wargames in general. I think this is the first multiplayer mission for Firefight, so that's really cool. I also like AI-controlled enemies, so that's enemies that aren't controlled by a player, but they have their own rules about how they work. So that's really well rolled up into a pretty neat package. My only real issue with this is I would have rather have the deployment zones be in the corners, rather than kind of this weird rectangle along the each edge, because players can start extremely close to each other. And depending on who you start next to and how they've deployed, that could be a massive downside for you. Whereas it's a lot easier to keep people sort of, a reasonable distance apart if you're deploying in the corners first. That would be the alteration I would make. But you can make that change yourself and just, you can either do a 45 degree, across, measure out from the corner, 6, 12, whatever you deem.
Or a 12-inch quarter circle?
Circle, within. It all has to be within X inches of the corner, as a quarter circle, exactly. Or even a square might suit your purposes if that's what's easier to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with you on the deployment zones, and you absolutely can be having people start very close to you. Fortunately, they don't score any points for attacking you. They only get points for the trees, but knowing some of your opponents, they're going to go after you anyway, right?
Of course.
A single plague zombie or even 2 plague zombies isn't particularly threatening. 30 of them, sure, that's a different story altogether. I think the zombies are actually more like leapers. That spawn those instead would make the game a lot more interesting. It certainly sounds fun. And give it a try. It's certainly need to go in there and have a look and see. I haven't played it, so I don't know. But the first thing I think of is the zombies. I kind of go, well, zombies, they would be annoying. And the fact that it slows you down a little bit, but not exactly threatening.
But the interesting thing about them, though, you got to think through how it changes a bunch of play. So you have to now move around them. They can accidentally block where you wanted to go. And even if there's a unit of 1 or 2 plague zombies that charges you and you're going to beat them no problem, on the downside, maybe they'll do a wound and you'll lose a model to a random zombie attacking you, which isn't cool. But then there's also the flip side, which is if a couple of zombies attack you and you beat them, you can now consolidate and you get an extra little bump in speed. So I think it just completely changed the dynamic of how you move around the table, which is cool.
It's also worth calling out that there are some rules in there as to exactly how these zombies are placed. So it is the player with initiative generally who's placing the zombies, and so they can choose where the zombies as they are spawned are appearing, and so you can make some tactical decisions there, unless there's already ones within range, in which case they grow existing units. I do think the scenario is possibly one for people who are already relatively experienced in Firefight, just because there's a lot of extra overhead with this one, in that you will need to move the Avaran Tree Beast around. You will need to do all the take it in turns to activate the Plague Zombie units that are scattered around the board that have been spawned. So there is a bit of extra overhead. It's probably for more experienced players, but I think it could really be a fun one.
Where I think this is likely to be played is either at a gaming club, come along and play in this game and let's have some fun. And if you get more than 4 people, just have a couple of people team up on a side, no problem. Or at events. Now, I don't think that there's too many 2-day Firefight events kicking around to sort of play it on the night of the middle day. But, a lot of tournaments here, some of the bigger ones, and even, I know a lot of the international tournaments, they'll often have people hang around and sort of play games that night at the venue or somewhere close by. Sometimes that'll be things like Dead Zone or poker or
other beer and pretzels.
Yeah. Liar's Dice, which is what we like doing at Clash down here in Australia. But maybe if there's enough players at that, say, Kings of War, for example, event that have firefight armies, then maybe try and tee up a game of this on that Saturday night.
But where would you get a tree beast model from?
Well, there is a carnivorous plant model in the vault. It's great. And that thing is huge. I had to scale it down in order for me to print it. So it's a big model, and it's great that it now has a use in firefight as a plague tree beast.
Yeah, that's cool. I had thought about using that as hydras in my nature, because it's multiple-headed tree beast.
Yeah, fun. I had originally printed it as an alternate aberration for my Maison Labs, as in rather than it being a plague human, instead making it it's another kind of
That's
Maison
really cool.
Labs experiment.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah. Which is why I had to scale it down in order to fit it on a 60 mil base. Those 60 mil bases are so small, mate.
Apparently so. Maybe you should put it on an 80 or even a 100 mil base.
Well, the Plague Avaran is on an 80 mil base, so there we go. Could always be a Night Stalker.
And that brings our discussion on narrative missions to a close. So until next time, stock up on your beer and pretzels, embrace the chaos, and unleash controlled fire.
Hear the tales, fierce and deep. Victors roar.